Hi, I'm Shane Rice. I am a digital marketing programs manager here at GitLab. And one of the things I work on is Google Analytics. And so I want to take a little bit of time today and walk through our tooling, how it's set up, what you can expect to find in Google Analytics, what you might not be able to find in Google Analytics. And then I'm just sharing that with my team and wanted to share this on GitLab Unfiltered. So share my screen now and we'll jump right in. If my mouse will, there we go. I can finally click share. All right, great. So this is the homepage you get to when you log into Google Analytics. It gives you some high-level overview kind of insight into what's going on the site. Defaults to the last 7 days. You can change that, in this drop down or other places on the page. I don't spend a lot of time here, so I'm not really going to spend a lot of time going over that. If we go to acquisition, this is something that's we've been talking a lot about recently, is channels and what we can expect to find there. And so as that loads, what we'll find here is we'll find organic search, direct referral, socials, branded paid search, generic paid search. So these branded paid search and generic paid search are both set by Google Ads. And so those campaigns get listed here. And we can click into those and see some information about those users.
So one question then is, what's in that paid search that only has 12 users?
We'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah, neither branded nor generic. It's like something else.
And so we can look at the landing page that they hit. So that's great. But what it limits us a little bit is, so we know they landed on this page, but if they continue through to a different page and convert on do some other event on our website, we can't really see that in this view, right? We can go here to conversions and see, okay, what do we have for conversions for, say, webcast registration?
And am I muted? No. And you're saying we can't track that they converted somewhere else because this is just landing page traffic, right?
Yeah, it's just showing us the page they landed on. So it's a good view of, okay, so where are people entering? How are they finding our site before they convert for this event? But it's not great at, showing us exactly where someone converts. So any questions about channels?
I think I might have answered my question about what's showing up in paid search that is neither branded nor generic. I wonder if it's stuff that's coming in without any tracking on it. Or it's something that is not Google.
Well, let's take a look, because I think what we can see, we should be able to see the actual URLs, the landing pages, and that'll tell us, why they're, why they're being grouped into that paid search instead of either branded or generic.
Not set. My favorite. Oh, look at that. No, those are paid search. Those are our paid search. So it just didn't get sucked into there.
Yeah, something in the UTM in the ad, whenever they click through, did not get picked up.
It's only 12.
Yeah. You can also dive into source medium. That's interesting because you can see at a glance where you are getting most of your traffic from. So Google Organic, where we get the majority of our traffic, but some Hacker News, Facebook paid social, those sources are there. And again, you have conversions over here. I'm going to expand my screen just a little bit. Hopefully that won't mess anything up on the recording. So you can, choose different conversions or all goals to see, where people are finding us and converting. Oh, good.
So quick question on that then. Is this based on the last touch attribution model?
Yeah, so Google Analytics is going to be last touch by default, just because our goals are all configured to fire with events. And so events are going to be the last thing they do. So we can work back from that. We can say, okay, so someone converted, on this goal, on this page. Okay, so we can look at the landing page that they came from. We can also look at the previous page. So great way this works, or a way that this works for some recent data. We were curious about how people are finding the mastering GitLab CI/CD webcast that we're getting ready to do. And so what we found there was that most of the people that are hitting that page and converting were on the continuous integration page before that. So we know that they have somehow either landed on or ended up on our continuous integration page. So that's product/continuous integration, and then click through on the call to action on that page, and landed on the webcast page, and then given us their information and registered for that webcast.
So we just need to work backwards whenever we're trying to figure out the funnel of things.
Yeah. I mean, it only works with a session. So that's some of our other tooling can go beyond that and create like multi-touch insight into like multiple visits. But for what we're doing in Google Analytics, is just per session is all we're really able to work backwards on.
We may be able to supplement that a little bit with Hotjar, because I did notice that LJ set up some funnel tests on there. So that might be another piece of data that we can use to match with this.
Yeah, it's of course anecdotal with Hotjar. I mean, it doesn't pick up everything. I find that Hotjar, not to get on the Hotjar thing, but it is very limited for some reason. It doesn't seem to capture even as much as Google is capturing, even if you assume that everybody's turned all their cookies off. But yes, we should look at those. Someone should set up a funnel for that page.
Matt, did you want to look at campaigns, or do you have questions about this?
No, I don't have any campaigns. I don't have campaigns. Any questions on this? I think it's more granular in the campaigns that I want to look at.
Okay.
So to the point of when we're talking about events, and let me take a step back. If I'm trying to see the success of a campaign based off of the segments that I built out, going to like goals and segmenting by source medium, that's not the right way to do it because of like sampling issues, right? So if I were to, and you said that the best way to look at it is to pull the full event page or event report and then segment based off of like what parameters are in the fields. Mm-hmm. However, if I'm going to do that, like an analysis on an ad hoc basis semi-regularly, that just becomes like a little burdensome. So I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to do that and look at segments without having to download a report and segment based off of like a field in a cell and have to do the whole delimitation thing and yada yada yada. So that kind of poses a question last week of, does Data Studio do sampling? Because I know that I've done a few reports in Data Studio where I'm able to get a little bit more granular in my segmentation.
Yeah, so I would say Data Studio is definitely the home for those kind of reports. And I'm going to pull that up now. And that's because instead of having to, like you said, separate everything into a spreadsheet and then split it into cells and try to figure out where everything falls from there, with Data Studio, you can actually say, set the parameters to say, I only want to see conversions. I want to have a table. In this table, I want events that are this category and that contain this, campaign name, right? So we can see this better with just commit. And I'm working on something for this for our CI campaign right now, but it's not. There's something in Data Studio that I'm doing in the filter that's causing it not to work right. So let's go to the page that we're looking for. So gated form submission. So we can see here that for the Cloud Native Transformation webcast, our Marketo Nurture email generated the bulk of those. And so we have total and then unique, and then we can all see, page, but we could also edit this to say, we could add a campaign name if we wanted to. So we can say campaign ID, campaign code, add that as a dimension. Let's add that between page and and so we can see, where those, what the campaigns are named at least, and then the source medium gives us that kind of breakdown. Is that what you're thinking about or what you're looking towards?
Hold on, muted. Yes, ish. So we're not going to run into any sampling issues if we were to, because I think in GA, those numbers are totally thrown off. So in Data Studio, I guess I want to confirm that these numbers aren't, I guess, being sampled, are sampled numbers, so that I can create a general dashboard that I can share with an agency saying like, hey, based off of what we're seeing in GA, this is where the performance is coming from.
Yeah, no, and looking at this report, I see that we do have some sample data in this chart.
Because it's 7 and 13.
Yeah, I would guess that there's something in the sampling that is throwing the 1s and the 2s off when we pull that data in.
Okay.
And, the good thing is that we actually have show sampling in Data Studio, so it shows up here, which is not getting that in Google Analytics now.
So you can see that it's being sampled, but you can't unsample it.
No, I don't think.
Okay.
I'd have to look into that.
Okay. So then this, even Data Studio is not going to be able to pull the exact numbers that I need because of sampling.
Yeah, let me look into that before we say for sure that it's not going to do that without sampling. I think that, because one of the things I have done also, it's not visible here, but when I was pulling event data for our just commit retrospective, I was coming in here and just doing a scorecard and saying, okay, so how many events that match this criteria? So how many events that match the webcast? How many events that match the different resources that we were promoting, having call to actions for across the website? How many of those showed up here? And so I may be able to do something that allows you to set that filter and then do a scorecard instead of the table, and maybe that will get around the sampling. So even though the table, we may not be able to get around the sampling of the table, there may be other ways to approach the data that simplifies that and makes it so that you don't have to go in and create a new spreadsheet and manually report on this every time you need to talk to the agency or report on goal behavior.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So I have 2 questions here. One is, we can assume from this, I think we can assume from this, that what the agency is pulling into their report out of Google Analytics is wrong. It's a sample. Is that right?
Well, no, because so the way the connection works is that AdWords sets the conversions based on goal conversion. So when a session that has the Google Ads cookie and UTM parameters in place, when that hits a goal, then that's what gets tracked on their side. So there's no sampling in that. Where we get the sampling.
I'm sorry, let me make sure I understand. They're pulling it from Google AdWords?
No, so AdWords pulls it. AdWords fires their conversion tag based on our goals.
Okay, all right. I did not understand that. Okay.
And so what we're doing, though, is working backwards from the goals, because of the limitations with goals in Google Analytics, to try to determine, what's the spread between organic, paid, paid social, those kind of channels. And that's where we're, getting into these kind of questions.
So for that Data Studio that we were just looking at, because the data is sampled, should we be sharing that? Because I think that's going to be very confusing to people who are expecting real numbers.
Well, so I think if we share it, we need to acknowledge A, that it's sample data, and B, I think we can look at that and clearly say, okay, so based on what we see here, here's what I expect this sampling means. So that 7 is actually 1. That 13 is probably a 2. And then when we report it that way. So use the dashboards as guideposts for us, but when we report on it, acknowledge the sampling and then give our best guess at what's the actual number based on the trends we're seeing there.
So what's in that just commit report, or what's in general reporting in Data Studio, I think is showing up in our monthly metrics. So we do not want to report that if it is not a real number. That's my concern, is we want to make sure that whatever we're reporting as our official marketing metrics is not this sampled report, because the numbers are so low that people are really going to look at them and say, we got 7, we got 13, instead of just, it's 100,000, sure, it's sampling, but it's such a large number.
Mm-hmm.
So let's make sure this does not end up in our monthly metrics, unless there's another way. And I know there was another part of this discussion, which is, Shane, you have some magical way that you might be able to create a better scorecard than this.
Well, so we're using events to trigger our goals in Google Analytics.
Mm-hmm.
And so our event data is very robust, but it does require a lot of manual work.
Mm-hmm.
outside of the sampling, so to avoid some of the sampling issues. So, for example, webcast is a category that I created recently to capture live events that we're promoting.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we go into the label, we can see, the mastering CI/CD, and then we can see the previous page. And as you scroll down, you can see the previous page with, the page that they're landing on with the UTM data in place, captured as the event label. And then we can use that to say, okay, so, out of this many visits, we got this many people that converted, and we have to assemble the data, but it's not sampled. That's the way to get not sampled data with some of the numbers we're seeing, right?
Okay, so you would have to manually pull this together to make a real, exact report.
Yeah, or I think, maybe move away from the table in Data Studio,
mm-hmm.
and use some other reporting mechanisms there. So, move to scorecards or something else where it's giving us one number and we don't have to, because what happens with the sampling, so 200 people converted. So, they're saying 15% of, the data we sampled shows us this many people converted, and then it just gets unreliable when you get down to those 1s and 2s.
Yeah.
So, and it's not unreliable in the sense of we know that 7 is probably a 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the problem becomes that, then, well, that number's wrong. What's the top number?
Yep.
So that's where I think, we want to make sure we're clearly, stating what sampled where and what that sampling is.
So, Matt, having Shane do this manual work would not solve the problem of the agency needs to be able to pull the data.
No. So in AdWords, I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to pull a report that tells me specifically which goals are fired,
mm-hmm.
which I haven't been able to figure out. That's why I go into GA and figure it out. My concern was kind of what you said was, are we getting sampled conversions in AdWords? And Shane confirmed that we're not. So what the agency is optimizing to is correct. Now
okay.
that we pretty much fixed all the goals that they're pulling in.
And the report we get from them tells us truthfully what basically what ads are leading to what conversions.
In theory, yes.
Okay, cool.
If you're pulling directly from AdWords, then yes.
Great. That is good news. It's just that outside of it, we can't see. We can't use this report to see overall, what is driving conversions.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And this is just it's just for AdWords. So anything I do with Facebook or LinkedIn would be a little bit more manual.
And so that would be something that would be, Shane, you would be going in here and pulling this out, which I do not think is a repeatable process.
Yeah.
We have to perhaps we should have an issue about how do we solve this problem and figure out actually how much work does it really take to get a true number of conversions.
Well, and I think too, we can also discuss is this, are we approaching this all wrong, right? Am I breaking the way we set, I set up Google Tag Manager and we're firing all this. Is it breaking, Google Analytics in a way that, is a problem?
I don't think you're breaking anything. I think we have hit the limits of Google Analytics.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the workarounds more of a problem than just like working with the data as it comes in by default, right? Because this whole question started with Matt wanting to validate what he was seeing in AdWords, and so I think
I opened the can of worms.
No,
it's good. We need to have that conversation.
Yeah, this is a great discussion. And so the other way of looking at this is, do we go to what comes out of Visible and Salesforce and say, this is the number? We can't know exactly what happened before we got to this, but we're just going to go with, we have a contact in here, and that contact is real. So that's the real thing that matters.
I think that's the real thing that matters, but I think the problem becomes is, and Matt, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what we're seeing we're not seeing the same level of activity in Visible that we're seeing in Google Ads and in Google Analytics. And so, that we're wondering where that disconnect is. So that's where I think, we're not quite sure how to move forward.
Yeah, and I think that's a separate issue than what this is. I feel like this is all GA manipulating data, and then Visible, Salesforce, that's a whole different monster.
It is. The question is, do we worry about people who did not convert and we don't have their contact information? Because that's kind of what we're getting from Google Analytics, is everything that happens before the conversion. The conversion is recorded in Salesforce eventually. Do we go with, that's what matters? Like, we just got people to convert on this one ad, so we just run this ad forever. I know that's really oversimplifying it.
I don't know. I can debate that one just because it may take more time for that conversion to happen in Salesforce. So then it's not a clean way to optimize for ads, because primarily I'm driving traffic.
What we need is multi-touch in Google Analytics. That's what we need. That works. That doesn't sample.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure they'll get right on that after charging everyone for business listings.
I think probably if we want something like that from Google Analytics, we would have to pay for it, and it would be another it's another metrics tool. Do you know, Shane, if Snowplow or any similar tool provides that level of detail?
I don't know.
Okay.
My guess is that probably not. But I mean, it's always a possibility. I mean, if you are creating that cookie and setting a TLD for like 30 days, then like there's no reason why you can't capture multiple sessions and then build that. But it's just a question of like, are you building out that workflow to capture that?
Yeah. Well, we're not.
No. So, all right. Well, so moving forward. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say this might be a little bit more detail. Probably talk about it in the issue better, but we may want, the best way to pull data and get source of truth is pulling the raw events report out of GA. I wonder if there's, it's going to take a bit of work, but putting that into like a data warehouse or using BigQuery to like manipulate the data and then create reports based off of that, and that may make things a lot easier.
So the good news is that we're having a discussion with the data team to connect Periscope and Google Analytics, so we may be able to do that.
Cool.
And so I think that can be something we mentioned in the issue as well, and see where that moves the sampling conversation. But I think for now we'll just move this conversation to the issue. I've got a call that I've got to hop to. So I appreciate y'all taking some time. Hopefully we answer some questions and then create a bunch of new questions.
No, this is really good. Thank you, Shane. This is good. And thank you, Matt, for basically forcing the issue for real. So who's going to make the issue?
I'll make it.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Thank y'all.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
Bye.